Greetings. I am Dr. Jamail D. Carter, President and CEO of the Kayannus Consulting Group, Incorporated, a full-service management and educational consulting practice where we assist organizations like yours align human capital with organizational strategy. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 10 of the Kayannus Consulting Group's Executive Edge podcast, your source for encouragement, news, information, and commentary, all designed to assist you, the Christian leader and executive, to thrive in both life and career. I invite you to like, follow, comment, and share. As we always do, we will begin our podcast today with the devotion. So I'm going to ask that you bow your heads if you're able to bow your heads, or if you're able to meditate as we go before God's throne. Dear gracious Father, we humbly and submissively come before your throne. Lord, we're thankful for this opportunity to share, this opportunity to illuminate, this opportunity to really discuss your word. Lord, I ask that you bless those that are watching, those that are listening. Lord, I ask that you will guide them, that you will direct them, that you will continue to illuminate their path. Lord, I pray that you will bless them in their lives, that you will bless them in their careers. Lord, I ask that you allow them to see the fruits of their labor. Lord, I ask that you will draw people closer to them that will be willing to assist them achieve the goals and aspirations that you have given them. Lord, I ask that you move right now as we begin to delve into your word. Lord, I ask that you will speak to us, that we can apply the principles that are found through your book of truth to our lives. In Jesus' matchless name, we seal this prayer. Amen. Our scripture reading for this devotion is coming from Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. This is a popular passage of text, but I definitely think it speaks to our devotional theme for this particular study. And it reads, "Now the Lord has said to Abram," who later became Abraham, "Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you." Verse 2, "I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Verse 4, "And Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran." So the theme that I want to talk on for this devotion is sometimes we must leave the familiar and embrace the unknown. And the reason why I think this is key is because sometimes our blessing is in the unknown. Growth for some will only come with a departure. And I say this in terms of our career. I think many of us can work at companies for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and our desires would be, okay, this time when the promotion comes up, hopefully they will give it to me. But there are those times when you can continue to hit your head against the wall, expecting to be blessed in your familiar situation when that is not the area in which God chooses to bless you. So in these instances, sometimes we must depart or have a departure from the familiar to the unknown for God to bless us. And so we see here with Abram, he was around those he knew, areas in which he grew. I guess some can say he was in his comfort zone. But in order for God to elevate him, he had to depart. But one of the things I think is important to also know is that God spoke to Abram, and Abram was able to understand God's voice. In order for us to grow and thrive, it is imperative for us to be able to know God's voice. If you do not know God's voice, you will not know when he's speaking to you or leading you to make a particular change in direction. And so I think sometimes people will depart out of emotion and not out of God telling them it's time for departure. So when we make decisions to depart, when we make decisions to say, you know what, I'm going to go into this direction, we need to make sure we're hearing from God, because if we're not hearing from God, we can be setting ourselves up for failure. So those are two principles that I think is important to understand from this text that we have just read. The first one is that growth for some will only come with departure. The second is it's imperative to know God's voice and his leading, because if he's not leading you to depart, chances are you can be putting yourself in a situation that's going to find you worse off than what you may be leaving. And sometimes we are there when this is saying, once again, I think when we're looking at the promise that God gave to Abram, who became Abraham, is sometimes we are there to lay the foundation. So when God sends us to depart and provides us with a vision, sometimes we will not see the manifestation of the vision, but God is using us to lay the foundation for what is to come. So you understand that Christ came out of Abram's seed. So the manifestation of that promise in terms of all the nations of the earth being blessed did not happen in Abram's day. It came later. So sometimes when God will call us to depart from a situation, to start a new business, to start something that's original, sometimes he's using us to lay the foundation for what is to come. The vision may be fulfilled outside of our tenure, but it may be our successors that are going to bring that ultimate vision to pass. And one of the things I think is also important to understand from this particular scripture is there is a divine assignment for each one of us. God has a plan for each one of us in our lives, in our careers, in our vocations. And it's imperative that we sit down and ask God to lead us, to guide us, to direct us, to show us and reveal to us what he would have us to do. Because you're not going to be fulfilled, no matter how hard you try, if you find yourself operating outside of his divine plan, outside of his divine assignment for you. Many people are miserable because they're going to jobs and they're going into careers and they're engaging in things that are in complete opposition to the divine assignment that God has spoken over their lives. So in order to be fulfilled, it's imperative that we are hearing God's voice and we're walking into the divine assignment that he has given us. And also, in closing, as we grow, we need to be willing to bring others along with us. So look at this. As Abram was leaving, he brought Lot. Scripture tells us, and Lot went with him. As God begins to elevate us in our career, there are others whom we need to mentor and show how to be successful. It is not for us to be selfish and hold our secrets to ourselves. In order for others to be successful, we have to be willing to share and encourage them into their greatness. I hope this word spoke to you. I hope it encourages you. I hope you will continue to seek God's face and ask him, is it time for you to depart? Now we're going to move on with some of the stories that have happened over the past week. I tell you, there is so many things unfolding in rapid succession that it kind of makes me wonder if this is something that I should do maybe a shorter chunks throughout the week as opposed to once a week. If you will like this to be done daily, or maybe several times a week as opposed to once a week, do let us know as to how we can best serve you in terms of providing you with the information you may have missed. Going into the world of business, Disney posted a rare quarterly loss as a result of COVID-19. This is the second major company that we have seen post a loss. Last week, we went over the fact that Starbucks posted a loss. And what this really means is for this past quarter, when it comes to expenses, Disney did not bring in enough revenue to cover their expenses. So they're having to borrow from their reserve to cover the losses that they're incurring as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a result of the fact that their amusement parks have been closed. This is the result of the fact that their cruise line has been closed, or some of the other businesses in which they need to generate revenue have not been able to generate revenue as a result of COVID-19. This is problematic, I think, long term, because what it's really starting to reveal is that some of these major companies are losing funds, and as they're losing funds, decisions are going to have to be made. So we're probably going to start seeing more and more layoffs as businesses are still forced to be shut down or ordered closed in some of these states. When you look at it, a large portion of Disney's properties and businesses are in California. Now, we do know that they do have some in Florida and some internationally, but definitely a large majority stake of their businesses are in California or in some of these hard-hit areas that are yet closed. So it's going to be interesting to see if companies like Disney begin to pressure the governors and begin to pressure legislators. These are people who are going to need Disney's money and donations to be reelected in November. So it's going to be interesting to see if big business will now start to pressure politicians to make decisions that they feel may be in the best interest of their business. Speaking of layoffs, another entertainment company, NBC Universal, has begun layoffs, and now they're shifting some of their resources into their streaming platform known as Peacock. So their Peacock service is where they're now beginning to spend resources, hoping that they can grow. Do I think they're going to grow? They do own content, but I also think this may be problematic because now you have to look at, you have Netflix, you have CBS, you have Hulu, you have all these different online streaming platforms. NBC Universal is now jumping in the fray, but it may be too late for them to obtain market share in a very crowded space that is becoming crowded quickly. But once again, we see another major company laying people off in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic. Twitter is being investigated by the Federal Trade Commission for alleged privacy violations. Another setback for the company that has struggled in recent years to protect private user data and account security. We also saw a couple of weeks ago where there was a hack, which I believe they said the individual was 17 years old, who was essentially the BitCon, hacked Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Kanye, and all of these celebrities to get individuals to send money into a scam. So we're seeing that Twitter is now being investigated, but this is also something I think CEOs and high-profile companies need to be aware of. Now, I'm not saying that the Federal Trade Commission is investigating Twitter as a result of the ongoing battle between their CEO and President Donald Trump. But one of the things I think is important is that CEOs become aware of that when you begin to weigh in on political matters and begin to take what people may perceive as sides, you may be making yourself liable to those who may feel you have slighted them or have done them wrong, coming after you in investigations. And I'm not saying that that is what's going on here, But I do think we need to be aware that we have seen there are petty politicians out there that when you give them a little bit of power, they will do all they can to essentially crush their enemies. And so Twitter and other CEOs, who are over some of these bigger companies need to be cautious in terms of, is it wise to weigh in certain issues? Because it may not be beneficial to you and to your stakeholders in your business to engage in political warfare with high-profile politicians. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Redbird Capital purchased the XFL for $15 million. Some of you may be familiar with the XFL. They relaunched this year. They were offering some, I guess you say, football in springtime. Their ratings were somewhat decent. They had good attendance, and then COVID-19 hit. And when COVID-19 hit, essentially the league had to shut down. And I would say that this may be a wise purchase by Redbird Capital and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Maybe we will finally see a spring football league survive. Definitely, I thought the second attempt was a lot better than the first attempt. But I do think, as with all businesses, you're taking risk when you open up and start a business. And I'm sure Vince McMahon and his team could not foresee that this would be coming down in 2020. But definitely, as a result of it coming down, the XFL had to file for bankruptcy, and now it has a new owner. So will it return in 2021? 2022, or maybe it will not return at all. Maybe this was a play to get the rights to do an XFL movie, or to also have some of the properties and logos and intellectual property that comes with that name, XFL. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes of this, but definitely it's something to kind of watch and see what happens. A small Texas firm, True North, and this is really a success story when you have so many companies that are essentially closing their doors during COVID-19, never to reopen. We do see that there are success stories. And True North is a small Texas company that has won nearly $90 million in federal grants to help oversee more than 350 COVID-19 testing sites, according to the federal contracts database. So essentially, they're not making any of the tests. They're essentially overseeing these sites and making sure that people in various locales can go and be tested for COVID-19. So this is a success story. We do see that there are businesses thriving during this pandemic. And I'm unsure if they're a public or private company, but definitely, maybe if they're public, you may want to look at investing in True North. More than 100 executives sent a letter warning Congress of catastrophic consequences without relief for small businesses. And definitely, we know there are a lot of businesses that may never reopen as a result of being forced to close by some of their local municipalities. Definitely, we wish businesses and their entrepreneurs, their leaders, their CEOs, their staff luck in these times. But definitely, if nothing is done from Congress or with some of these governors willing to allow these businesses to reopen, definitely we may find ourselves in a depression where it may take long years to climb out of, especially if we put ill-equipped individuals in charge of some of our states and or this nation come November. Speaking of ill-equipped individuals, going into the world of politics, as I stated, and as you are aware, we are in the midst of a pandemic. We're in the midst of many businesses closing, never to reopen again. We are in the midst of high rates of unemployment. We are in an economic recession. And what does California politicians do? Well, according to a new bill, AB 1253, Santiago is the person whom I believe introduced this bill into the California legislature. He is desiring, or she is desiring, to raise the California tax from 13.3% to 16.8%, retroactive to January 1st, 2020. You cannot get more idiotic than this. In the midst of an economic downturn, in the midst of high levels of unemployment, we have politicians wanting to raise taxes on businesses. Now, I understand you have spent the reserve in which Jerry Brown established for your state. You're spending money that you do not have in an effort to get the money you want to raise taxes. How are you going to raise taxes with high unemployment? How are you going to raise taxes when you have a lot of businesses closed? It appears as though we have another politician that does not understand basic economics. Let's see if Governor Newsom is wise enough to understand basic economics. Will someone in his cabinet provide him the insight and information that will let him know that this is problematic? Because essentially what you're doing is, if you're raising taxes on maybe those businesses that are open, you know, chances are we are seeing an exodus of businesses to Texas and Arizona and Nevada. Is this a chance that you may be asking more businesses to leave after the pandemic, after you have lost a lot of businesses that will never reopen? Come on, we need politicians with common sense. And AB 1253 is something that no one in Sacramento should pass. As we're getting close to November, and if you're unsure as to how to vote, you may need to call your local state senators, your local assembly persons in California, and ask them, where do they stand on AB 1253? Because essentially this bill has the ability to cripple our economy for years, if not decades. Speaking of politicians, some of you may or may not be aware that we, in the midst of monuments being being torn down, Confederate monuments being torn down, some religious monuments being defaced, the question has come up. And that question is, will Joe Biden apologize for his friendship with known member of the KKK, deceased Senator Robert C. Byrd? Definitely, I do think this is something that Joe Biden needs to answer for. I do think if it's his desire to get the African American vote, he needs to come out and apologize for his friendship that he had with a known member of the KKK. We're talking about equality. We're talking about equity. We're talking about Black Lives Matter and all of these talking points. I do think it is time for Joe Biden to come out and admit that he was wrong, and he should have never been in a friendship with a known KKK member and deceased former Senator Robert Byrd. Let's see if Joe Biden will stand up and admit that he was wrong. Speaking also in terms of politics, reports came out and surfaced that cancer has returned for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Supreme Court Justice. And as a result of this, there is discussion as to if something happens to her, will the Senate essentially move to replace the vacancy if Trump nominates someone? Definitely, this has the ability to further fracture the country if something does happen to RBG and Trump nominates and the Senate looks to confirm a nominee. We saw what happened the last year of President Barack Obama's administration, where there was the death of a justice and the Senate, the Republican majority, not wanting to move forward with that particular nomination, and essentially waited until after the election. It's going to be very interesting to see if that happens, what will happen. I think the prayer we need to have as a people is that we pray that RBG stays in good health, that definitely this is something that we do not have to deal with at this point of going on in our nation, that, you know, she's able to recover and get healthy. Because I do think when we see what's happening in this nation, if something were to happen to her, we can find ourselves in a very, very, very polarized country and nation. I know some of you may say we're already polarized, we're already in the midst of chaos and calamity, but I think it could only get worse if something were to happen to her. There seems to be a delay in terms of Joe Biden choosing a running mate. There are reports that behind the scenes, those that are running are really jockeying for position. Definitely the name that we have not heard, and I tell you, I will not be surprised if this is the person whom he chooses. I think I said it last week, but I think I will say it again, is Hillary Clinton. Definitely, I think we have heard about Kamala Harris. We have heard about Elizabeth Warren. We have heard about Representative Bass and all these other individuals whose names are being thrown out or floated as possible VP candidates, but we have not heard about Hillary Clinton. Yes, she was the first woman to get the nomination for a major party, but definitely will Joe Biden put her on the ticket? It'll be interesting. No one knows what he's going to do, but I will say, like I said last week, I will not be surprised if Joe Biden selects Hillary Clinton. And the reason being is because that's the only name we have not heard. And from what I can say in my time and following politics, it always appears that the nominee for vice president is someone whom you did not see coming. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. Our last story in politics is also something that kind of fits in the world of business, and this involves TikTok. And President Trump saying that, you know, this came out before talks of Microsoft possibly purchasing the TikTok app or company, but he was talking about possibly banning TikTok through executive order. And I do think what we're definitely seeing is there is a lot of political maneuvering going on right now between the United States and China. And definitely, I think we're starting to see a fight over influence internationally, where definitely China all these years have been playing a long-term game, and we in America have been enriching China, I would say, to our disadvantage. Definitely a lot of things are being made in China. I know there are individuals whom have ordered products that are essentially stuck in customs because they're coming from China, as people are waiting for China to send things. And we saw that Newsom renewed a contract with a Chinese mask manufacturer of $3 million this recently. And so we have to ask ourselves, have we essentially hindered ourselves by shipping manufacturing overseas? I know it's beneficial for businesses, but I think what we are starting to see here in the midst of what's going on, we now have a whole lot of Americans unemployed and a whole lot of money being shipped overseas to purchase products and services that we're not making in America. So at some point, our politicians, both on the right and on the left, are going to have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the citizens of our nation and of our various states. Moving to the world of health and education, there were some major developments that came out this week. The first one I would like to discuss is Johnson & Johnson's Spravato, which is a nasal spray, has been approved as the first antidepressant for actively suicidal people. And this comes as doctors are becoming increasingly concerned about COVID-19's effects on the mental health of Americans. Definitely, we have a lot of people that are at home. We have a lot of people unemployed. We have a lot of people that are suffering from mental illness and are suicidal. So now there is a nasal spray available to those individuals that is an antidepressant. But also, I do think what we have to start asking ourselves, have we overreacted? And are we now causing more harm than good as a result of some of these draconian decisions being enacted by various governors, various, I guess you can say, county supervisors, various mayors throughout the nation, because we are seeing that there is now mental health issues are on the rise in this nation. Something else that came up this week that I think we need to wake up, and this is a report that AstraZeneca, Britain's second largest pharma company, told Reuters, a senior executive, that their company has been granted protection from all legal action if the company's vaccine leads to damaging side effects. So essentially, what has been worked out for pharmaceutical companies is that we want you to rush to produce a vaccine. We do know that there is a history of pharma companies, big pharma companies, lying about data when it comes to drugs. But definitely, essentially, now they are essentially being granted immunity from lawsuits if it comes out that their drugs are bad for people. Now, if you look, Fauci a couple of weeks ago was talking about it will be good if, we get 50% efficacy from a vaccine. 50%. Essentially, that means it does not work on 1 out of 2 people. Wake up. Essentially, with this vaccine, now they're saying that we the people, if we choose to take this vaccine, will be guinea pigs. And if something happens to us as a result of us injecting in our bodies poorly manufactured, or I guess you say poorly manufactured drugs into our bodies that may have adverse side effects. Maybe you're now unable to have kids. Maybe you die. Now your family will be unable to sue drug manufacturers. See, one of the things I can say when it comes to decision making, if you are a leader, one of the things they tell you is that you should never make a decision out of emotion, because chances are when you're making an emotional decision, you're going to make the wrong decision. And so what we're seeing is that we have a lot of politicians making emotional decisions that are not in the best interest of people. So now we are seeing that pharma companies have been granted immunity or protection against lawsuits or liability from ineffective drugs that may cause us more harm than good. You need to ask yourself, are you willing to take a vaccine that may not be Safe? Because your family will not be able to sue. So I guess you have one or two choices. Do you want to risk catching the coronavirus and dying? Or do you want to take a vaccine and die because it comes out that the vaccine does not work? This is the choice we're being forced to choose. Some will tell you it's the lesser of two evils. But if we look at the data, if we go back to the data, over 90% of individuals who capture or who contract COVID-19 survives. That's what the data reveals. So if we know that 90% of the individuals survive, but now we're providing essentially a safe haven for ourselves to become human rats or guinea pigs for our pharmaceutical companies. Not sure I'm willing to take that ride. Moving forward, Knowledge Ecology International has filed a petition asking the FDA to ban music during risk readouts and direct-to-consumer drug advertisements on TV, radio, and internet. So essentially, they're saying that they feel that Americans or human beings are not able to make sound decisions if music is playing and we're hearing the long list of the side effects that come with these various medications that are being advertised via radio, TV, and the internet. The one thing that I think most people do not know, and I know this personally because I did a thesis on the impact of direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertisements. And what I can tell you is that direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertisements aren't truly all that persuasive, because in many cases, they are being sent to a large majority of people who are watching this ad that may not be suffering from that particular condition. Excuse me. Maybe if someone is suffering from that condition, the ad will be persuasive. But for the majority of Americans, they are annoyed by direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertisements. But definitely, as I said, Knowledge Ecology International would like the music on such ads banned. It'll be interesting to see how the FDA rules on this. But, you know, chances are, looking at the fact that now pharmaceutical companies are being granted waivers, I'm not sure that that is going to happen. So a new modeling study was published by researchers at Harvard and Yale University that concluded that the safe way to bring college students back to campus this fall would be to test them for COVID-19 every 2 days. Every 2 days. Is that practical? No. Is that financially possible? You're just going to eat into the college's budget, or it's going to be passed off to students, meaning tuition is going to raise. Definitely, just because something is recommended does not mean that it has to be followed. And testing students every 2 days is just not realistic. It's just not practical. And actually, it's a waste of possibly tax-funded dollars spent on silly research. There seems to be a whole lot of silly research that people are giving grants to study. And definitely, I don't think that's a practical solution. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Frustrated with their university's plans for fall, including full dorms, UNC Chapel Hill professors tell students to stay at home. So we're having faculty members essentially tell students not to enroll in classes, not to come to campus. If you have no students to teach, Do you have a need for faculty members? I will say that this is problematic. Yes, you can offer classes online. I do know that there are institutions that are offering classes online. But I also see that there are a lot of students who are electing not to spend the high amount of money on expensive institutions. So if you're having massive declines in enrollment, it's going to impact jobs. It may impact faculty jobs, administrative jobs, staff level jobs, but without the tuition revenue coming into institutions, just like with all businesses, if you do not have a sustainable reserve, chances are there's going to have to be layoffs. I do not know if this was a wise decision by the UNC faculty to recommend students not come back to campus, but definitely that's something they need to ask themselves. What are we going to do if there's no demand for education? Think, people, think. Also in the news, the University of Arizona has purchased the former for-profit institution Ashford University, which enrolls nearly 35,000 students. So we saw this with Indiana, I believe it was Purdue, that did this with Kaplan last year or maybe 2 years ago. And now we're seeing more public universities looking at buying some of these for-profit institutions. Online learning is here, and online learning is here to stay. So definitely it's changing. The landscape is changing. And I will say it's good to see the University of Arizona take such a massive jump in, feet first, head first, plunging into online education. And I do think we're going to see the first movers into the marketplace are probably going to be the ones that's going to gobble up market share. It's going to be interesting to see if other systems will jump in the future. Moving into the world of nonprofits and churches, Pastor John MacArthur, who pastors Grace Community Church in Los Angeles, who essentially has been told that he faces fines and arrests for defying Newsom's July orders of hosting indoor services, is continuing to hold indoor services. Now, there are two things that I think we have to say about this. One thing is you can have service outside. I know a whole lot of churches that are doing the drive-through service, doing services outside in tents. So there's ways in which one can worship. The church I pastor, Greater Blessing San Bernardino, that's how we do service. We're doing it outside in a tent. But then I think the question we have to ask is, how much of a deterrent is an arrest in California these days? Because as a result of COVID-19, you have zero cost bail. As a result of zero cost bail, it appears as though most criminals or those that are being arrested are being released in about 30 minutes. So essentially you arrest Pastor MacArthur and in 30 minutes he's free. If you do not believe me, a couple of months ago, there was an individual that I believe the report was he was arrested 3 times and booked on 3 different felony charges, all in the same day. So I do not think it's a deterrent for those who do choose to continue to hold worship service indoors. Definitely, I can see his point where who is the governor to tell individuals how they can worship and serve their God? In this country, we should have a freedom of religion. There should be a separation between church and state. But when we have politicians who feel that they can do what they want when they want to do it, you have essentially this struggle and this fight and this fight between politicians and the church. Now, definitely there are options available for the church to make. Definitely, hopefully we will get some type of resolution to this soon. But as I said, if you look at the rates in California, yes, the number of people who have tested positive for COVID have increased. But with the increase in positivity rates, what we're seeing is that there has also been an increase in the survival rates in the state. The church has to realize that during this time, we are at war with secular humanism, and there's an attack on the church. And we see this happening in Portland, Oregon, where protesters are burning Bibles, they're burning the American flag. We saw that Antifa activists were threatening to tear down a cross at the private New Hope Christian College in Portland, Oregon. There are people who hate Christianity. And it's time for those in the church to wake up and realize that this is not the time for us to be passive. This is not the time for us to sit back and allow our religious freedoms to be trampled upon, because there is a hatred for the church. There are some people who have came out and articulated that they feel that Christianity is part of white supremacy. This is the type of rhetoric we're starting to see against the church. And definitely, as you can see throughout the world, there is yet areas in which Christians are being persecuted, where they're being decapitated, where they're being martyred for their faith. And if we do not wake up in America, we're going to start seeing some of that take place here in this nation. According to a German newspaper, a former Pope Benedict is seriously ill. Definitely, we do pray for him, just like we're praying for our RBG, that definitely that they will both recover. In terms of news and information, some interesting tidbits that came out. According to Gallup, a Gallup poll, currently 13% of U.S. adults are satisfied with the state of the nation. Only 13% of adults are satisfied. Definitely, that's not looking good for incumbents when we get to November. I'm sure we're going to see a massive influx of new individuals being voted into office. There was a Las Vegas gambler who was removed from the Four Queens casino in handcuffs after he went into the casino without wearing a mask. So they had him handcuffed. There were 3-4 looked like police officers from the picture that arrested this individual who went into the casino not wearing a mask. And according to Reuters, U.S. renters owe $21.5 billion in back rent. Yes, these numbers, these economic numbers are not good. And definitely, if you have individuals trying to raise taxes in such an economic situation, this is really problematic. As we do, we tend to end our podcast with career advice. And the advice I would have for you for your career and your professional self is that you should have multiple revenue streams. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. You need to make sure you have a diversity of income sources. If you have a diversity, like I said, multiple revenue streams, do not have all your income in one basket. You need to have a diversity of income sources. If you have a diversity of income sources, it will help to protect you in times of economic unrest. So that is my career advice to you. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Kayannus Consulting Group's Executive Edge podcast. I hope it speaks to you. I hope that you have a productive and blessed week, and that you and your family will continue to elevate and continue to go from blessings to greater blessings. Until next time, be blessed.
My name is Sonia Bellamy. I enrolled in the course at Greater Blessing because of my friend Yvonne. She gave me the information, and I felt that it would be something that I would like to look into. I always have had people come to me and just talk to me about their life, their feelings, their purpose, what should they do, and also ask for prayer. So I decided to just take the opportunity, but first I had to check with God as well, and I felt that He did unction me to take the class. I would say the most challenging aspect of the class is that I had to go inward and work on some of the things that I was learning. And when I started pulling those things out that, as far as coaching is concerned, I started thinking about, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go with this business? Or how do I want to help people? What does God have for me as far as being a Christian life coach? Because it's kind of a threefold. Christian, that means being a Christ follower life. That means helping someone in their everyday. And then also coaching means that you're there, even when you don't want to, but you're there to inspire. You're there to help them understand that they can do it, especially when they don't believe they can. You are their cheerleader. The most rewarding aspect, yes, all the ladies, unique as they are, I'm blessed to just be able to talk with them, communicate with them, learn from them, because they all came with something different. We had someone like Coach Sammy Love. She took the course before us, alumni, as we would say. And the way that she just broke it down for us helped. Then we had someone that has been a counselor, been in the aspects of helping others. She broke it down a little bit different for us, as far as, in a way, I had to think differently and understand to accept certain things from others, which I may not understand. But right now, that's what they understand. And they're not looking for my opinion, they're looking for my acceptance. I had, of course, another person who is just an inspiration, period, by herself. She has several businesses. She does a lot for others. She gives and gives to the point where she pretty much just drains herself, and she replenishes somehow back with the Lord's help. And then I had, of course, my friend Yvonne that really helped me through some hard times as I was going through this course. And then also we just started counseling each other, not counseling, sorry, coaching each other. to just do what we said we always wanted to do. And I learned from that. I would say, first of all, if you're on the fence, you need to take time with God, especially if you're looking into being a Christian life coach. You need to find out if this is something that He is unctioning you to do. And when you get your answer, you need to go forward on that answer. And so if it is something that He's unctioning you to do, I would say move forward quickly, move forward with the understanding that you will change, as well as looking forward to changing and helping others. Look forward to new relationships. And I would say, just look forward to what God has for you. I would say for the curriculum, it wasn't hard. It is challenging because Dr. Carter is, a dean, and he is someone that is over, I believe, a university, so that higher education. But he does break it down for you so that you will understand clearly. I know I've had to several times where I've called him because I did not understand what he was asking for the assignment. And he really took the time to help me understand. And then from there, I was able to flourish and I complete the assignment.